Alright, everyone. We are going to talk about Nostr. So let me just get a raise of hands for a sense of the audience. Who is on Nostr? Anyone? Okay. Interesting. Who uses it regularly? Okay. 4 people need to get a new life. Look, Nostr is still in the early days, and I am going to discuss a little bit about where the future is going to be, or where the future is going to lead us with the emergence of Nostr itself. So I'm going to start out with a prediction, right? And my prediction is basically social networks of 2030 will be different to social networks of today, and in some ways they're probably going to resemble the social networks of the early 2000s and maybe the late 2000s, that sort of region. So the way it starts out by kind of like framing is, back in the day, social networks started out built kind of like social graphs. They were about who you connected to, friends, who you followed, who you subscribed to, etc. And some of you may remember the original Instagram logo, or I've got the MySpace logo there. Do you remember MySpace? It was old thing on there. That is not the old Twitter logo. All of these things started out as social networks being the key word. What happened over time is they became social media. So these new apps, and some of them are still open, Facebook is still there, X is, obviously what was previously Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. These things are more about the media you consume and less about social graph. In fact, TikTok really transformed things in probably about 5 years ago when it came out, and particularly over the last 3 or 4 years, is you don't go to TikTok to see what your friends are posting. In fact, the social graph is almost irrelevant on TikTok. What's relevant is whatever the algorithm will feed you based on what is engaging or consumptive or whatever that is on the platform. And I'm not saying this in a way that, TikTok is bad, algorithms are bad, this is bad. It's just a different way. Understanding this, the two different paradigms is important. We've moved networks and we moved over to media. And another way to sort of visualize this is this kind of timeline where we started on this side. We started with these social graphs, friends, subscribers, followers, depth, right? People who were connected to back in the day. And YouTube was one of the first things that, it still actually had subscribers. So you would see the stuff that you were subscribed to, but over time it started to shift, right? And you started getting a situation where all of the apps started moving more towards this end of the spectrum as I was explaining. And what we've got now is basically everything's cranked on the left-hand side. Everybody's trying to serve media, trying to figure out how to get to the consumer and all this sort of stuff. And what I'm going to talk about in this discussion today is why that happened, how it happened, and what I think is going to occur over the coming decade. So first of all, I just want to say that this is what I think the future is kind of potentially going to look like. I don't think that the content media platforms are going to disappear, but I think there's going to be a resurgence in social networks or social apps that make friends, subscribers, followers, and get a relationship important once more. And I think we're going to have a world where we have a little bit of both.
I just realized I have a TV here, so I can actually look in front of me without looking back. There's a great talk actually by a guy called Jack Conte. He's the founder of Patreon, and he gave this talk, and he kind of talked about it as like Web 1.0, 2.0. In the 2010s we had ranking, and then 2020s we had content algorithms. And one of the framings that I liked from him was this idea that the content media platforms are more about reach and discovery, right? You can have 0 followers on TikTok, you post the video, it goes viral, all of a sudden everybody sees it. So it's got nothing to do with your social graph, it's all about discovery. Whereas where I think traditionally social and subscribers and all that sort of stuff was this kind of idea of like your true fans. You're building a relationship with someone on a regular basis. Someone follows you, someone subscribes you, and they want to establish a relationship with you. That's currently missing on the internet. I mean, companies like Patreon are trying to fill that gap, but the fact is they're built on and around platforms that don't enable the creators to develop depth anymore. They create the incentive for creators to build things for reach, which starts to create some perverse sort of outcomes. So the question, why, how the hell did this happen? How do we get here? Well, it kind of starts back when the internet was formed. So the internet is this kind of stack of protocols. You've got like the physical layer, the link layer, you've got the IP layer, the TCP layer, and then you have the application layer, HTTPS, which all of the stuff is sort of built at this layer. Now, what was always lacking in the early internet was a layer for identity. Also another layer for money, like so money transmission never was able to happen. Obviously, we know a thing called Bitcoin, which is why we're all here. That started to transform things. It gave us the ability to transfer value directly peer-to-peer. But the identity piece was always missing from the internet. And what this meant was, despite the fact that these 4 layers gave us a whole new design space. Before the internet, there was no such thing as Google or Amazon or Uber or Facebook or any of these things, right? So the internet, with these 4 layers, gave a massive design space where literally, fundamentally, the fabric of society, the fabric of the world basically changed. But what we got was identity living inside the applications. So what that means is, you go and sign up to Uber, you have an identity with Uber. You log into your bank account, sign up to a bank account, you have an identity with the bank account. You sign up for this conference, you have an identity with the conference. So every single application actually has an identity. So all of a sudden you end up with hundreds of identities. Google and Facebook and stuff tried to solve that with single sign-on, but introduced a new problem, which is kind of this centralization around your entire identity is held with these guys, which can be easily turned off, can be easily censored, can be easily lost, can be easily all that sort of stuff. So you start to get the situation where these companies end up treating you as the individual, as essentially a product, because that's what you are. You are a identity, a unit inside their walled garden, so to speak, right? So where do I think we're going? And this is the thing that I'm thinking of here. Like I'm trying to frame it as social 2.0. It's not a very creative name. I'm sorry, I'm not super creative in this sense. But basically, the idea is that over the coming decade, what I think is going to happen is a new set or a new kind of wave of social networks is going to start to rise up that, as I said earlier with that graph, going to be more social network oriented or social graph oriented. And we're already starting to see the rise of a couple of these, right? So there's like Kara, which is the one with a C. That's a Instagram specifically for designers that doesn't allow any AI content on there, right? So it's a very narrow niche, but they're building it for that and they're growing. They've got like a couple million users now. There's there's Blue Sky. Obviously, they just hit 15 million users. That's like the communist bastion of version of fucking Twitter, right? There is Truth Social, so that's the MAGA version, right? So you've got these kind of communities and these apps developing around these things. So I think what we will see in the future, alongside the billion user applications, is probably the 10 million user, or the 20 million, or the 30 million user. Now, there's three apps on here, Atlantis, Primal, and Damus, that share something really interesting, which is they share the fact that they are built on a common protocol. So what I mentioned earlier about the identity living inside the application, we have now a fundamental paradigm shift available on the internet where a common protocol for identity has been established, and I'll show you what that looks like. Essentially this, we have now the 4 layers of the internet stack that I showed you guys before. We have a layer for money, and now we have a layer for identity. And to kind of come back to this slide, this identity, I call it rich identity for the web. And the reason it's rich is that it's not just an ID. On Nostr, you can actually append a bunch of stuff to your identity. So your identity is actually just a key pair, similar to Bitcoin. So you have your public key, your private key. Nostr is a key pair identity. So it's a bearer instrument, means that it's yours, you hold it, you own it, and you can append data to it. So you can put things like your profile picture, you can put a description. But most importantly, and this is where I think the killer feature for Nostr is that you can have your follow list and your follower list. In marketing, particularly in digital marketing, what they say is that you don't own any of your audiences other than your email list. So they always teach you, build up your Instagram, whatever, but drive them through a funnel so that you can bring them down to your email so that you can capture their email address, because then you actually own it. Well, Nostr is kind of like takes the email component, because if you have your identity, if you have your key and your follower list is attached to it, you actually own now your follower list. So you kind of get the benefit of email with the distribution of a social graph, which is very, very interesting. A couple other things about Nostr: it's stateless. So unlike blockchains that try and aggregate state and data and all this sort of stuff, Nostr kind of puts the state like to the side. It's like, okay, we don't need state like the internet. It solves storage through this like relay mechanism. And what relays are, a simple way to sort of understand it, is relays are a bunch of databases living all over the internet, and different clients or different apps can listen to different relays for data. And you as a user, it's really interesting. If you've got some sort of sensitive data, let's say you were RFK 6 months ago, a year ago, and you wanted to talk about vaccines, if you posted your content on any normal social media platform, it will get wiped, right? But you might have said, look, I want to make sure that that data doesn't get wiped. You could set up your own relay, you could put your own data on there, and any client, any Nostr app can listen to that. So you have basically uncensorability because you're storing that data yourself on your own relay. So you could be on that end of the spectrum. You could be on the other end of the spectrum, which is, yeah, well, I'm just posting my travel pictures. You don't need to then go and store it on your own database and make sure it's uncensorable. No one gives a shit. It's like no one's going to censor some travel content. So in that case, other clients or other relay services can be more as a service kind of structure, which is basically like what Web 2.0 is. So Nostr solves storage in a very interesting way, which is it outsources it to the market, and the market can decide based on what the use case is. It also outsources money to Bitcoin, and as I said earlier, it's a bit of a protocol. So it opens up a whole new design space, like I said here. So if you can imagine the 4 layers of the internet gave us Google, Facebook, Uber, all this sort of stuff, Airbnb, etc., transformed the world in a big way. This new 2 layers are going to give us another transformation. I don't know if it'll be as big as before and after the internet, but it's certainly going to be significant when you have an identity layer and you have a monetary layer. So to kind of sum up, the way to think about Nostr is not, oh, it's just a Twitter clone, or it's a Twitter for free speech. No. The way to think about Nostr is it's a universe, it's a basis for a universe of applications where your identity is yours, and you can go, and instead of like, we even have to change the idea of like login. You're no longer logging into applications. What you're doing is you're unlocking an app. So you're taking your key, you unlock, and you have full usage of that application. And if you don't want to use it anymore, I guess you log out or you lock it, and then you go to the next application. Do whatever you want, right? So it's yours, but there will be an entire whole like ecosystem of different applications that use this unlock lock mechanism and that leverage the social graph, that leverage the social posts and all this sort of stuff. You got this massive interoperability between them. So you want to think about Nostr as the substrate for a whole new world of applications that may be built. And right now, I will admit, the only applications that are being built are freaking Twitter clones, right? So everyone's building another fucking Twitter, like Damas, Primal, this, that, everything, Amethyst. They all look kind of the same. They all have their little variations and tweaks, and that's not to denigrate those things. It's just that's the state of where Nostr is at the moment. In 5 years, there's going to be 100 other apps that we didn't think about today. And that's essentially, and this is where I'm going to give you a little bit of shill on what we're building, is what we're trying to do with this app called Satlantis. So we're trying to build something to use elements of Nostr in a way that is different than just building another Twitter client. So we have this thing called like a city page, where the city itself is made up of posts, so social posts. So our app listens to the whole Nostr network, and anything that is relevant or hashtag to that city or whatever we pull in. You have people, so you can see like people can mark themselves as visiting, as following, as living, or as an ambassador of a city. So that way you can see very quickly, kind of a bit like Orange Pill app in this sense, but you can see and you can connect with people. And I guess it's less creepy than Orange Pill app, because on Orange Pill app, people like, randos can like contact you and you're like, who the fuck are you? Whereas here, there's actually like a social graph. You can see who do they follow, what's their content, what's their profile, all that sort of stuff. So it gets interesting. You've got scoring, you've got events, you've got merchants, you've got all this sort of interesting stuff. And we're leveraging Nostr not only for the login, but for the social graph to mean, and this is where it gets really interesting, is I want this page to change for everybody who goes on and visits the page. So to give you a way to think about it, if all of us logged into TripAdvisor right now and we looked up San Salvador, every single person in here would see the same page, the same merchants, the same things to do, the same experiences, the same shit, right? On Satlantis, if we get this right, you will, if you're interested in Bitcoin, if you're interested in surfing, if you're interested in food, we're all going to see a different feed, different people, different events, different chats, different communities. So it should be dynamic. It should evolve based on who you are, what your interests are, and what your social graph is. Now, that is a unique approach to using some of these ingredients that Nostr gives us that other applications don't. So, the idea is we want to kind of combine a bunch of ideas. We've got this sort of Instagram-esque ability to create content, build an audience, connect with people, follow people. And the fact that Bitcoin is sort of a standard for it, I mean, imagine you're a content creator. Let's say you're a nomad. You want to travel around the world. You want to do stuff. You have like the places that you want to go, or you might have a guide. You might have a course that you want to sell or an experience, like come to San Salvador and I'll give you a guide, whatever. You could have all of this stuff listed inside your actual application. I wonder if my clicker is going to work. So you could have it inside the info section or in the bookmark section or in my experiences section. So you start to get this kind of creator toolkit where you can get paid, you can build an audience, you can sell your services, you can connect with people, you can find things, you can discover, you can do all that sort of stuff. This is why we're kind of calling it a super app. The other piece that's in there is this really cool merchant map. So has anyone here ever used BTC Maps? Kind of few people, yep. So I love Nathan, but I mean, it's an open source project. It's very hard to use. Like the merchants don't have great profiles. Like it's very hard to find people. Half of the merchants don't even accept Bitcoin. So what we've done is we're building a very, very highly curated map where you can find things like, beyond just they accept Bitcoin, but things like, I want to find a $1 free restaurant. I want to go to the best carnival place. I want to go somewhere for the vibe or for the food quality. I want to go somewhere where people that I follow are going, because I trust them. I want to go somewhere that the people that I follow, that I engage with, have reviewed. So we've got this kind of like rich map idea, once again, influenced by your social graph, influenced by a bunch of things. Third, we've got this events piece in there as well. So meetups, conferences, retreats, all this sort of stuff. We want to have like farmers markets as well on here. And once again, if you're interested in, let's say, freedom, you should see meetups that have something to do with freedom tech or whatever, right? If you're interested in food, you should see that sort of stuff. So you'll be able to host events and discover events and find community and do all that sort of stuff. Once again, because we're trying to use the Nostr social graph as kind of like the crux of what we're doing. So you can kind of think about it like almost, it's interesting. When Facebook first came out, people didn't know what the hell it was. They're like, oh, how the fuck do we like define this? What is it? Well, in the same way, I'm having trouble defining what the hell we're doing with Atlantis. It's kind of a bit like Google Maps, a bit like Meetup, a bit like Instagram, a bit like TripAdvisor, all kind of mashed up into one, using Nostr as the technical substrate. And the people that we want to build this for is whoever kind of fits in this Venn diagram. So if any of these are sort of your interest, like network state, nomading, geo arbitrage, like we have a funny shirt in the back called Flag Theory, stacking passports and dodging governments, right? So like if you're in any of these buckets, this is the kind of network, this is the kind of thing that we want to build for you guys, because discovery is a problem. So let me wrap this up here. And kind of like leave you with a mental model for what the future might look like. Social 1.0, today, they're about large billion-plus user platforms. I think Meta has 4 billion users, that's half the world on there. TikTok, I think, has close to 1 billion, whatever, right? So they're about large things. They're about few. So there's only a couple of these large players. They're more about discovery. They are more content platforms. So they have more in common with Netflix and YouTube than they have with what the early social networks were. They're more about influencers, like a real 1% of creators, because these creators get good at hacking the algorithm, and then you get these outsized returns. And they're more about, as I said, the algorithm. Social 2.0, in my opinion, is going to start to see the emergence of more niche and micro social networks, stuff that is more domain specific. I believe there will be many more of these because the world is becoming fractal. Like fractured. There's many different interests and people want niches. And I think previously all of this stuff was done on forums, right? Forums were where you went to get like the deeper, more engaging information for stuff. I think now we're going to have almost, I mean, I could call it forum 2.0 with what's coming up here. It's going to be more about relationships. It's going to be more about community. It's going to be more about friendships and connections. It's going to be more about the social graph. So I wonder if I had another slide. Okay, I don't have another slide. So that's basically the presentation. So Nostr is a rich identity protocol for the web that enables an entirely new design space for the web. And the kind of products that are going to be built on it are unlike the kind of products that came before. There'll be elements of them all in there, but there's going to be new things. And that's what gets me sort of excited about this, is like, I don't want to see the same shit over and over and over again. And that's fundamentally what we're trying to do with Atlantis. So if you're interested in more Nostr stuff, there's going to be a Nostr day on Sunday in El Zonte. You can RSVP to the event by going to the San Salvador or the El Zonte page on Atlantis, so Atlantis.io. You can look it up. The app is going to be available in a couple of weeks. We wanted it to be ready for this conference, but we didn't make it there. If you like the basis of this talk, Social 2.0 is a little blog that I just started. I just put out the first blog. It's futuresocial.substack.com. And you'll be able to get a written version, essentially, of this talk. Thank you all. I hope that was useful, and I'll see you on Nostr.